Back when I was still in elementary school in the early 2000s, I remember coming across a set of instructions online detailing how to make a handheld NES out of existing hardware. The idea seemed pretty cool to me, being able to take something as large and clunky as a console and turn it into a handheld. And my first thought was, what if I could do the same with a custom PC? Instead of having a laptop, what if there was a fully functional computer that I could hold in my hand? Little did I know, even at the time, that device already existed. Before the iPhone came around and basically shook up the entire tech industry, the theory for portable computation was a bit different. The continuum of powerful devices to portable devices was beginning to blur. On one end, there was the strictly portable devices like calculators, PDAs, and eventually cell phones that evolved to become more like traditional computers, and on the other side there were desktop PCs that shrunk into laptops, tablet PCs, and eventually UMPCs, or ultra-mobile personal computers. UMPCs, an official hardware specification devised by Microsoft and Intel in 2006, are fully functional PCs built to have a pocket-sized form factor. They're more like a sub notebook than a smarter smartphone, since part of the UMPC spec includes being able to run Windows Vista. The first glimpses of UMPCs, though, predate the name by a couple of years. Founded in the distant future of the year 2000, the company OQO had been teasing a handheld PC like I had described for years. 4 years to be exact. And after much anticipation and doubt, the OQO Model 1 would finally ship in 2004. Of course, in that time, Sony was also getting on board with the whole micro PC thing, and started putting out a few sub-notebooks of their own. In fact, at nearly the same time as OQO, Sony released the VGN U50, a fairly comparable computer at about the same form factor. Now, a certain other YouTube channel, with timing so good it's actually getting a little bit uncanny, has already done a great job taking a look at the OQO Model 2 from 2007. But after seeing the OQO in action, I can pretty confidently say that it really doesn't hold a candle to Sony's UMPCs out at the same time. So, just for fun, let's take a look at what Sony had to offer in 2006, a year before the OQO Model 2. What I have with me here is the Sony Vaio VGN UX 280p, and don't worry, I will be referring to the Sony Vaio VGN UX 280p by full name for the rest of this video. It's a fairly mid-range model from the UX line of UMPCs, boasting a 1.2 GHz Intel Core Solo and 1GB of RAM. Pretty typical specs for a laptop of the day, crammed into a device 6 inches wide, 4 inches tall, and packing some serious girth in the Z dimension at nearly 1.5 inches deep. Overall, the Vaio is a good bit chunkier than the OQO, but either way it still maintains a sweet futuristic design, which landed the Vaio tons of cameo spots as the stock fancy tech product, in movies like Terminator Salvation, Quantum of Solace, and the sci-fi classic Paul Blart Mall Cop. The Vaio has a 4.5-inch display along the front that slides up to reveal a backlit QWERTY keyboard underneath for thumb typing. Down the sides you've got a mouse nub and buttons, controls for things like the screen zoom, and physical feelings like a hardware switch for the Vaio's wireless communications. The screen is really the center of the whole thing though, and for 2006 it really is excellent. It has a resolution of 1024x600, putting it at almost twice the pixel density of the original iPhone, which would come out a year later. The display is also touch sensitive, with a telescopic stylus stored around the back of the device. It's not a Wacom pen like the OQO, so there is no hovering, but for a resistive touchscreen it gets the job done, though calibration is definitely required. As remarkable as the tiny display on this thing is, it sometimes does have the drawback of being a bit too small. My Vaio came pre-installed with Windows 7, which does have larger UI elements that are easier to click, but the OS that this model originally shipped with was XP, and a lot of things on screen there are much harder to click on the first try. The stylus isn't the only input option though, since there is a mouse nub on the top right for more precise movement, that appears to have gotten a bit more fidgety as time has gone on. The Vaio is shaped really well to be held in your hands, with its curved up sides offering a nice place to grip onto, though the typing experience in this configuration is less than ideal. Since the screen has to slide over them, the keys have basically no travel. I have a really hard time telling whether I just bumped one or if I actually triggered the key press. It seems to have been inspired from other thumb keyboards of the time, mostly on cell phones like the BlackBerry, but where the BlackBerry would allow the press of one button to change the entire mode of the keyboard, the Vaio needs special keys to be pressed down for every key combination, which just isn't how thumb typing works. Keyboard ran aside, the rest of the device is pretty satisfying to use, especially the actual hardware feelies along the handle grips, including a locking power switch and an actual hardware switch for the Vaio's wireless communications. Speaking of wireless communications, the Vaio definitely took the ultra mobile message seriously, supporting Wi-Fi and Bluetooth like most laptops of the time, alongside cellular 3G. That's right, with the proper screwdriver you could open the left side of the Vaio, plop in a SIM card, unfold the wireless antenna along the back of the device, and connect to the internet from nearly anywhere the 2006 cellular data could reach. The more unique hardware doesn't stop there. Along the top of the sliding screen unit, the Vaio has a tinny microphone, a webcam, and a thumbprint scanner. That's right, not only was the Vaio years ahead of the iPhone in terms of a fully portable computer, but it also had fingerprint recognition years earlier. The Vaio has a 320 by 240 front-facing webcam attached to the screen, and another sneaky camera along the back. This rear camera has a resolution of 1280 by 1024, a physical focus slider along the top edge of the screen, and a capture button above the mouse cursor that makes the device feel like a regular digital camera. Sadly, Sony has not been very kind in maintaining legacy downloads for their Vaio software, meaning I currently am unable to track down the necessary software, Vaio Central and the Vaio Camera Capture utility, for testing this camera. If I come across them in the future though, or if one of you lovely viewers can help me out, I'll gladly update you all on how well it works. The Vaio has slots for one USB device and a Sony Memory Stick Duo card as well, but the rest of the I/O for the Vaio is left in the port replicator docking station. Simply slide the computer down on top and now it has a connection for charging, Ethernet, 3 additional USB ports, VGA output, Firewire IS400, and even AV output for a TV set. The dock is honestly a pretty seamless way to switch between a desktop and portable computer. You just plug it in and suddenly you have an extra monitor, a full mouse and keyboard, and power. Then you can pick it up without unplugging any cables and be on your way. The only ports which don't pass through the dock are the audio jacks along the bottom, which makes sense seeing as this allows you to keep headphones plugged in regardless of whether the Vaio is docked. Now with its release in 2006, with 1GB of RAM and a 40GB hard drive, the Vaio is more than powerful enough to run Windows XP and all my favorite XP programs. Being a computer mainly aimed at the professional crowd, I can imagine Microsoft Office being a pretty popular choice. And of course, the Vaio runs at no fuss, though actually typing out any documents or spreadsheets on the device's embedded hardware is an exercise in patience. But why stop there when you can get the full Windows XP experience, including a Bonzi buddy you can carry around with you in your pocket, ready for the exact moment you need to hear a bad joke or a wonderful text-to-speech rendition of your favorite public domain songs. Jokes aside, the real fun XP programs are the games, and for a portable computer, the Vaio actually blows the gateway profile out of the water in terms of capability. With an Intel GMA 950, not only can it run all of the Windows XP test games on full settings without a hitch, but it actually handles arrow effects in Windows 7, which I have dual booted on here with Windows XP. It takes a while to load, but I was even able to get Portal running. Granted, the frame rate is poor, especially with even one level of Portal render recursion on, but it is kind of incredible seeing one of my favorite PC games now effectively becoming a handheld title. Of course, the Vaio wasn't really designed for gaming, and it does show. I already mentioned the unpleasant lack of any tactile feedback from the keyboard, but in general, first-person controls just don't map all that well to the Vaio. I found the most success in mapping controls for the mouse buttons to other buttons on the keyboard so I don't have to reach up, but even that's just a minor fix. As strange as it is to say, in terms of pure graphical capabilities, the Vaio is probably the most powerful machine I've ever covered. It obviously doesn't compare to a higher-end desktop computer of the time, but at least it has enough pixel-pushing power to properly partake in pocket-sized disco antics, courtesy of farbrausch. The popular demo here is being rendered in real time, though the Vaio can also handle video. In fact, its 1024x600 display here actually helps it out quite a bit, approaching HD resolution, and being able to play HD video without any noticeable stutter. Online video is another story, with obvious lag even at standard definition, though the Vaio almost pulls it off. This probably has more to do with the fact that most modern browsers have a much higher demand for memory than the Vaio in its 1GB can provide. The latest version of Chrome here, while still able to run on the Vaio, is painfully sluggish. In fact, for the first time in years, I've actually found myself choosing Internet Explorer over Chrome, because IE was actually faster. If these limited specs get you down though, fear not. While Sony doesn't offer many easy opportunities for hardware upgrades, in fact disassembling this thing is far too terrifying for me to even attempt, there does exist an active modding community for the Vaio. One particularly crazy member of which went so far as to upgrade the processor in their Vaio to a 1.5 GHz dual-core U7700, and also gave the thing a 128GB SSD. I for one though am perfectly fine with the Sony Vaio VGN UX 280p as it is. The OQO may be smaller than the Vaio, and the Vaio may be more powerful for its price than the OQO, but where both fail is in terms of usability. Tiny PCs are really neat toys, but for something intended to be handheld, an unmodified Windows desktop just doesn't translate all that well at all. That and the pretty high price for this family of portables kept them from ever really taking off. New Vaio micro PCs stopped being announced by 2007, and OQO would officially shut its doors just a few years later. It's a shame the popularity of these devices died out as quickly as it did, but that death was probably for the best. Compared even to smartphones of the time, UMPCs are just way harder to use, even if they were more powerful. In that sense, we're probably better off to just remember them as a strange but certainly interesting final experiment in the space of pocket-sized computing.